welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays. And today we are going over the best slate of the year, the Week 5 slate. This slate was absolutely loaded. Now, I'm going to preface this to you guys before we start this episode. I was not locked in on every single game. One, obviously, there was just so much to watch, and there were so many time slates where your eyes just could not be everywhere. Other than that, I was hanging out with my friends for a lot of these games as well. So, again, it's not like I'm at my house locked in on every single play. I did go back to definitely see the stuff that I missed. But for the games that I did watch, I'm definitely going to have a lot to say about them. And the games I didn't watch, I'm going to give you guys my just opinion on how I thought the game went. Now, another thing I really want to get your guys' opinion on is, do you like that one slate is just so juiced with all these games? Or would you like college football to spread out the slate? Now, there are two sides to this for me. The one thing I like about one slate being absolutely juiced is it gets anybody who like football into the day. What I mean by that is there are some people who really like the NFL that are casuals of college football that don't really tune in week to week, which I think is a lot of the country. People just tune into, their alma mater, somebody who went to the school that's closest to their state, but they're not locked in every week on a college football slate. This slate gives anybody who likes football really the ability to lock in on the whole entire day with how interesting the matchups are. Now, for me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of it because I feel like college football from week to week slates drop off a lot. Like there are multiple weeks in college football where there is no main matchup in the whole entire Saturday. A whole week goes by where there isn't like a main marquee matchup. So me personally, I would love if they spread out the slate a little more so we just don't have those dud weeks. And again, for me too as well, you're just not able to see every play of every game, every main game with all being in one slate. I want your guys' opinions on that. Drop down below if you like a couple slates of the year being absolutely juiced and then other slates, again, being duds. Or would you like them to spread out the schedule a little more? Also, another thing we have to talk about as well is how well we did on our picks for this main marquee matchup slate. We go 5-2 on our picks now. Unfortunately for me, I don't really get into it personally, but the two games that I absolutely hammered were the two losses. So I did not do as well as my picks did necessarily. Did want to say that as well, even though I don't want to go into that. We're going to get into this college football slate. We're going to get into what teams we figured out a lot about, how this changed, the rankings, everything. Let's get right into it. Now, the first game I do want to go over that is going to be very brief is this Notre Dame game. Notre Dame, Arkansas. This game was an absolute domination. This is a game that your coach gets fired for after this game, and that's exactly what happened. Notre Dame has an out-of-conference SEC matchup. They travel to Arkansas. Arkansas is home in this game, and this was one of the games in Notre Dame's schedule that we thought could possibly be a little tougher for them. The way Arkansas was playing coming into this game, they had two disappointing one-score losses, but Taylor Green looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He had 1,500 total yards coming into this game, but Notre Dame absolutely dominated them. It comes from the back of Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love has 4 touchdowns in this game. He's able to do running the ball, receiving the ball. Not only that, like we said, Jeremiah Love being the best running back in the country isn't the only running back in this offense. Jadarian Price is also an NFL back. He has 86 yards and a touchdown as well. And he also has another touchdown receiving. He has 2 touchdowns in this game. CJ Carr played phenomenal, as well as just basically everybody on this Notre Dame offense. CJ Carr goes 22 for 30, 354 yards, 4 touchdowns. You can't get a better game out of him. Now, we saw Notre Dame in this game absolutely dominate Arkansas in the trenches, and that's what makes Notre Dame different and why they're going to have a case to be a college football playoff team down the road. Like we talked about how they have 2 one-loss scores in their schedule, two teams that could end up being top 15, top 10 teams in the country. They played them well. Now it's going to be their true test to show in these matchups that people think can be somewhat close for them to absolutely dominate, because that's going to be their case. As an independent team with 2 losses, they might not be able to get the first couple of bids for 2-loss non-conference winners because they have an independent schedule. That is going to work against them. A lot of people like to say, Notre Dame plays an independent schedule. They bounce around, play an easy schedule. They always play to their advantage. But when we are looking at college football committee putting in teams, them being a two-loss team independent is a lot different against a two-loss SEC team or a two-loss Big Ten team that had a tough schedule. That's going to be a slight against them. So Notre Dame has to make sure they dominate in these matchups, and that's exactly what they did. It felt like every single play in this matchup, they were able to break off for 10, 15 yards. It looked like they were literally able to do whatever they wanted. I mean, when you have a quarterback that throws for 354 yards, and you also have 212 yards on the ground, and you have 6 touchdowns between your running backs, like, you are able to absolutely do everything. And I was super impressed with them on the defensive side of the ball as well, because we saw a Miami game that ended up in the high 20s that they lost in. And then we saw a Texas A&M game ended in the 40s. So for them to hold Arkansas, an SEC team with one of the hottest quarterbacks in the country, to 13 points, and that offense have the complete inability to do anything, I think Notre Dame definitely made a statement in this matchup. And again, like, they were fired up because of the 2 losses they have. They got to put the pedal to the metal. They beat them by 43. Last week, they beat Purdue by 26. This is exactly what we have to see from Notre Dame to get them into the college football playoffs. They have to really and truly not even win every one of their matchups. Next matchups, they have to dominate them. And this game was a complete domination. For an SEC school to lose by 43 points, not be able to get anything going on offense, and your defense to be absolutely ran and thrown over, embarrassing for Arkansas. That's why what happened. And Notre Dame looked phenomenal again. They're trying to make a college football playoff push, and I think they know that the committee could rule against them if they don't take advantage of every single one of these next matchups. Getting into the next game, we are going into USC Illinois. Now, I honestly thought this was possibly the best game in the entire slate. Now, again, it's Illinois, USC. It doesn't have the firepower that a lot of these other games did, like Penn State, Oregon did, that ended up being a close game as well. But this game was absolutely phenomenal, and I loved how Illinois came out. I think this game showed way more about Illinois than it did about USC. We told you guys that a lot of things in college football is matchup and timings. Sometimes you just play a bad matchup at the wrong time, and that's exactly what happened to Illinois. Indiana absolutely demolished them in the trenches. They lost by 40-plus points in a ranked matchup. But I told you guys, Illinois is still a really good football team. And I was so impressed with how Illinois came out. They have 2 back-to-back tough matchups, and you get the absolute doors blown off you last week, and you come out and win this game. And I think it really starts with Luke Altmaier. I think Luke Altmaier had the best college football weekend out of any player this weekend. When we look at what he did, 20 for 26, 328 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. Then he rushes for a touchdown, and he catches a touchdown. So he passes, rushes, and catches a touchdown. He goes 20 for 26, and I thought he really looked like a point guard in this offense. He was just distributing the ball to people, making the right play every single time. No major turnovers, getting the ball to his playmakers. I thought he played this game really smart. And again, like I said, for them to absolutely get dominated and your quarterback have the best weekend in college football, arguably, against a really good USC team, I was so impressed with Illinois. Another reason why I was impressed with Illinois as well is the protection they were able to get for Luke Altmaier. There were plays on plays on plays that Luke Altmaier was able to sit in that pocket and be able to go through his progressions. First read, second read, third read, before he was able to hit somebody. Like, again, I think it's a combination of Luke Altmaier coming out as a point guard, distributing it to his playmakers. But not only that, the offensive front, I thought they were dominating USC's defensive line. And this was the one thing I did have to say. Like, I told you guys, this USC team has proved to us nothing yet that they are different from USC in the previous years. I told you guys, in matchups, even though they were 4-0 come into this game, I did not like how their defense played against a Michigan State, against a Georgia Southern. I thought they let up way too many points. So I wanted to see this defense again, because we saw his defense improve a little bit last year, but I thought this defense looked absolutely horrible. Like I said, they could not get to Luke Altmaier at all. They let up 34 points. Again, that's also with fumbles in the red zone as well. It could have been 40-plus points very easily. I thought USC's defense really looked horrible. But the one thing I do want to discuss about this USC team is the adversity they were able to come back from. I mean, this USC team was down 2 scores. And when you talk about USC, them coming back, their offense, it really starts and finishes with Mekhi Lemon. Mekhi Lemon was an absolute monster in this game. 11 receptions, 151 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Mekhi Lemon, again, as they were down multiple scores, he was able to score a touchdown, get the 2-point conversion, and then Illinois had a massive fumble in the red zone in the game. USC gets the ball back. Mekhi Lemon scores another touchdown. Like, Mekhi Lemon absolutely dominated this game. What he's able to do from the slot with a diverse route tree, it's just unguardable. His routes are flawless, and his speed, again, separates him as well. Mekhi Lemon and Luke Altmaier had 2 of the best days in college football, no doubt about it. This USC offense is still really good. Like, I'm not going to slight the USC offense. It's different because of the running game that they have from previous years. Like, Waymon Jordan is really good. Even though he had a massive fumble in this game, he had 94 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing the football. Again, over 100 yards if you combine receiving as well. Like, the USC offense was not what I was worried about at all. It was the defense. And, again, they proved to me absolutely nothing because their defense, I thought, looked completely awful. Like I said, they cannot get to Illinois at all. I thought they got dominated in the trenches when it comes to offensive line to defensive line. Like, this USC team, like I said, did not prove anything to me at all. And I thought this spread was absolutely ridiculous. I said it at the time. I'm saying it now. Like, you guys have to watch out for timing of certain teams. You can't jump off a team like Illinois that's a really good football team because they got blown out in one matchup. You're going to learn that throughout college football, that week to week, sometimes it's just timing in a bad matchup. And you get blown out by a ranked team one week, and then you could have a really good week against another ranked team the next week. And that's exactly what Illinois did. I applaud Illinois. Like I said, I already said it, but just the adversity they face, absolutely getting blown out against Indiana, coming against USC and winning this football game, a football game that was back and forth. And for USC, this is why I think they are only a top 25 team. Their defense still has proved absolutely nothing to me yet. Their offense, it's phenomenal. Jada Mayava, really good quarterback. Mekhi Lemon, one of the best players in the country. Another receiver in Jacoby Lane that's going to be an NFL receiver. Waymon Jordan, they do have their running game as well, but this defense had proved absolutely nothing to me yet. I said it. Didn't like how the defense was coming into this game. And for me, I thought the defense really looked as bad as they could look. I thought they were getting dominated by Illinois' offensive line. And I thought this game could have been Illinois scoring 40-plus points if they didn't get those fumbles. All right, now we're going to get into the next matchup. This matchup, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Like I said, my eyes were on the Ohio State-Washington game in this slate, which we are going to talk about. But we're going to go over Ole Miss LSU. I like Ole Miss in this game. I thought Ole Miss was riding the hot hand in Trinidad Chambliss. And I think this game went absolutely perfectly for Lane Kiffin because if it was a big conversation of what quarterback he was going to choose, and if he chose the wrong one in the sense of LSU winning this matchup, it could have caused major questions for this Ole Miss program. But he chooses Trinidad Chambliss, and Trinidad Chambliss still remains to look really good. Now, he did make one bad pass that resulted in an interception, but this was a guy that passed for 314 yards on an LSU defense that looked like one of the best in the country coming into this game. And he also rushed for 71 yards as well. Trinidad Chambliss is just like a absolute stat patter. Like, he's a really good quarterback, but at the same time, all 3 starts we've seen of Trinidad Chambliss, this guy has nearly 400 total yards in every start against LSU. And Kawan Lacey does really good as well. He has 87 yards and a touchdown. Caden Lee has a touchdown as well in this game. His Ole Miss offense, in my opinion, still looks really good. And that was my concern for LSU coming into this game. LSU's offense just hasn't been there. It hasn't been anything like we thought it was going to be. And Ole Miss was humming on offense. And I believe that's what happened in this game as well. Credit to Ole Miss defense. They did look really good. Ole Miss defense was able to stop the run, which was phenomenal. And I think the reason why Ole Miss won this game, LSU was not able to run the football at all. When you run for 59 rushing yards, it's going to be extremely hard to win a game, especially in a top-ranked matchup. They get balled up for 59 yards. Another huge thing, Garrett Nussmeier throws another bad pass for an interception. This is multiple games now where it feels like every week Garrett Nussmeier is throwing interception. And for this receiving core that we thought was going to be the best receiving core possibly in the entire country with the amount of track stars they have, nobody stands out as receiving core at all. 63 yards for the top receiving target, Xavier Thomas, in this game. And then Nick Anderson had a touchdown. Nick Anderson was a guy that we thought was going to be one of the best receivers in the country, a guy that was going to step up in these big matchups. He does score a touchdown, but again, it just isn't enough. And I think this LSU has a lot of questions for Brian Kelly because this LSU offense has a ton of talent. Like, it has a ton of talent. Now, the reason why they weren't able to rush, obviously, Caden Durham was not in this game. That was huge for them. Caden Durham was in this game. It could be a different game when you're able to run the football. But when you're sitting back and passing, and like I said, when the play calling gets obvious and you can't run the football, that's where a top-ranked defense is going to, tee off on you in a sense. But I got major questions for this LSU team now. I got major questions. In the beginning of the year, I was saying this LSU defense is not what we expect at all. This LSU defense is way better than we thought. And this offense has the talent that we know to come around. And I still think this LSU offense can come around. But at the same time now, we are in week 5, and we saw one really great performance from this LSU offense. And I'm not going to lie, for a 4-1 LSU team that's ranked 4, they beat Clemson. Right now, you're looking at that Clemson win not the same as you did in week 1 because how Clemson turned out. The offense really was not phenomenal in the game at all. Scored 17 points. Against Florida, they didn't really do much either on offense. You had defensive scores, only 20 points scored for LSU. And then you have Ole Miss again with 19 points scored. The amount of talent at receiver, how talented Garrett Nussmeier is as a quarterback. Major questions has to be asked. Why is this offense not producing? And for Ole Miss, again, I really liked them at home. I thought they were humming. I thought they were overlooked. And Trinidad Chambliss is going to be a guy that probably starts for the remaining of this year. He's the hottest player in the country right now. There's no denying it. And I think it's the right move as long as Austin Simmons stays for next year, because Austin Simmons was Lane Kiffin's guy. He was a highly touted prospect. But Trinidad Chambliss is going to be probably his last year in college football. So to ride it out with him and then stick with Austin Simmons for next year, if that's how it pans out, I absolutely love it. But let's be for real with how Ole Miss season went last year. You can't be thinking of 2-3 years down the line. You got to be thinking of right now. And Trinidad Chambliss is that guy that gives Ole Miss the best chance of winning. He has been absolutely phenomenal. And you just got to love his story. A guy that comes from Ferris State to be the starting quarterback of Ole Miss, beats out a highly touted guy. Now you could say beats out a highly touted guy because at the time he was a place starter. You have to absolutely love it. This Ole Miss team is red hot right now. Now we're going to get into another thing I did want to discuss in this slate very briefly was Texas A&M and Auburn. Auburn does end up covering this game, but I was not impressed with Auburn at all. Auburn was not able to move against this Texas A&M team. But for Texas A&M, a team I absolutely love, I thought winning this game 16-10 was super impressive because we saw Texas A&M defense last year be an absolute force, and then this year they have been letting up so many points on defense. And what have we been saying to you guys time and time again about this Texas A&M team? They have one of the most explosive offenses in the country, if not the most explosive offense, and they have the talent on defense to figure it out. But we have not seen a good defensive game from Texas A&M, an impressive defensive game for Texas A&M. So the fact that they were able to win this game on the defensive side of the ball, I absolutely love it. Holding a tough Auburn team to 10 points, again, you guys may not like Auburn after the last 2 weeks. I still think Auburn is a tough team. Being able to stop Cam Coleman, limiting him to 4 receptions for 18 yards, super impressive from the secondary, one of the best receivers in the country, limiting them. Only 125 passing yards, only 52 rushing yards. You're only letting up 160 yards of total offense. You gotta applaud Texas A&M. This could be a massive turning point for them because if this defense comes along, there's nothing this offense couldn't do. Now, Marcel Reed didn't have a great game in this game by any means. When we look at 207 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick, but this Texas A&M offense, with the playmakers they have, they're gonna will them to wins. Even in the game they score 16 points, you have a running back like Le'Veon Moss that goes for 139 yards rushing and a touchdown. You have a ex-receiver in KC Concepcion that has 113 yards receiving. Like, they just have too many playmakers on this offense to not be in every single game. And if this defense comes along, Texas A&M could be definitely the surprise team of this year when we talk about national championship possibly contenders. Like, Texas A&M is just a great football team right now. And I love that their defense came around this week and won them this game because that was the biggest question mark for this team in the last 4 weeks. Sorry, I got a little too hyped about that. Now we're going to get into Ohio State, Washington. Like I said, we are going in chronological order. Ohio State, Washington. Now, this was a game we did get wrong. And this was a game that I'm honestly going to say it. I think I got a little too cute with this game. When we look at Ohio State, Washington, I absolutely love how Ohio State has played this game on both sides of the ball. First off, they didn't ask Julian Sain to do too much, but Julian Sain, I think, did everything asked of him. I love how they are playing Julian Sain. We talk about in Julian Sain's first matchup was at home, but it was against Texas, the number one ranked team in the country going into the year, and he did just enough to win that game. Then you look at the two cupcakes he played phenomenal to get his feet wet in college football. Then you look at this Ohio State-Washington game, they expand the offense a little more, let him do a little bit more than the Texas game, still play somewhat conservative, but Julian Sain did not miss a beat. He goes 22 for 28, 208 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He gives the ball to the two best playmakers probably in this offense, Jeremiah Smith and also C.J. Donaldson as well. Jeremiah Smith gets a touchdown on an easy screen pass. C.J. Donaldson also gets another touchdown on a short pass as well. Like, Julian Sain did not make any mistakes. He rarely missed any passes, and this leads Ohio State to win 24-6. So now when you look at Julian Sain, he beats, like I said, the number one ranked team in the country going into the year at home. Then he also plays in a very tough environment in Washington, in a team that we thought was pretty talented, a top 25 caliber team, his first road start, and he was absolutely flawless. He really was not altered at all in the slightest way against the environment. He goes 22 for 28, like I said, perfect nearly, doing what was asked of him, puts up 24 points. And then when you look at the defense of Ohio State, this is like a huge difference from Ohio State for me than last year. And it's probably because of Matt Patricia. Like, Matt Patricia, you look at the Texas game against the number one team in the country, had Arch Manning absolutely fooling that game from start to finish. Then when you look at this Washington game, same type of deal. What have we said about this Washington team? Their run game is possibly the best in college football with the dual threat quarterback they have in Demond Williams and arguably the best running back in the country in Jonah Coleman. And they let up 61-yard rushing in the entire game. That was a huge difference for this Ohio State and Julian Sain to be comfortable as well from what their defense was giving them. This defense was absolutely shutting down Washington. When you have Demond Williams, like I said, one of the best dual threats in the country, rushing for negative 28 yards, Washington having the inability to run their offense how they like it, Matt Patricia absolutely shut down the noise, and me personally thinking this Washington team was going to have a chance in this game. When you have Demond Williams, Jonah Coleman, and also one of the best receivers in the country, Denzel Boston, having 3 receptions for 26 yards, 3 main playmakers, 3 top-tier playmakers getting shut down, you just have to applaud Matt Patricia. This Ohio State defense is not playing around. We saw last year from the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes, games that Ohio State let up 20-plus points. You look now in their 2 toughest matchups against Texas and against Washington, they let up 13 total points. Now, I get it. Everybody could say, you have Ohio State. That elevates you to a head coaching job. That elevates you to, an NFL job. If you're a coordinator in Ohio State, it's basically automatic. No. Matt Patricia is doing even more than expected from Ohio State. 13 points against Texas and against Washington combined is absolutely ridiculous. And again, like I said, playing top-tier quarterbacks in the country. Again, I can't say enough about Matt Patricia and this defense. He is absolutely phenomenal. And for Ohio State and Julian Sayin, I absolutely love how they're developing Julian Sayin. In these close contests, not putting too much on Julian Sayin's plate, him coming out with the wins against the cupcake matchups, him absolutely dominating. I think Julian Sayin is on the right path of progression for throughout the season. And I think when Ohio State gets in the playoffs and they play top teams, it's going to look a lot different. A lot more is going to be on Julian Sayin, but it is because of how they are developing Julian Sayin. Like right now, to start his college football career, they aren't putting too much on his plate. He's going to develop throughout the season, and he's going to be even better come playoff time, take even more of a hold of this offense. And I believe, like I said, this passing game could be even better than last year's with Julian Sayin. Julian Sayin, as a pure, accurate passer, I think could possibly be one of the best in the country at one point in time. Absolutely love this game. And then again for Washington, kind of in the same boat as USC for me right now, where they couldn't compete in this matchup that a lot of people, even myself, would have thought that they could have competed in. And they might just be like a top 25 team then the season ceiling, and that's it. Even though they are exciting, like I said, they have three of the best players in the country, Demond Williams, Jonah Coleman, Denzel Boston, but they all got completely shut down. Ohio State's coaching staff on the defense side of the ball, absolutely phenomenal. And then how they're using Julian Sayin, like, I just have to applaud Ohio State. Like, I have to applaud them. Now we're going to get into Alabama, Georgia. I think this was the most massive win a coach could have had this week in Kalen DeBoer. I thought Kalen DeBoer was on a tremendous hot seat after what happened last year. And then you talk about the upset from Florida State in week one. He finds a way to win this game against Georgia. And no matter what Alabama is, no matter what Georgia is, it is always a well-played, close game, no matter if you think Georgia's a lot better than Alabama in the given year or vice versa. These rivalry matchups are always played well. It's the same thing with Ohio State, Michigan. No matter what state each team has, no matter what type of state the program's at in the given year, always played well. But recently, Alabama has found ways to beat Georgia. This is now 2 consecutive years. Both years under Kalen DeBoer, he has beaten Georgia. There's definitely something to say about that. Now, it's going to be very interesting to see for Alabama because they were in pretty much the same spot last year. I think they were undefeated last year, though. They play they play Georgia, then they play Vanderbilt. It's going to be the same thing again, and Alabama has a tough remaining schedule. If this win against Georgia is going to propel them into a college football playoff spot, get them one of the hardest matchups in the country out of their way, or is Alabama going to unravel? Like, they have an extremely tough schedule. They had one loss against an ACC team, which I thought could not happen with their schedule, but now they knock off one of the biggest opponents, so they're still moving in the right direction. I believe the difference in this game was the ability of Ty Simpson to pass the football. I thought he completely outplayed Gunnar Stockton. When you look at Ty Simpson, 24 for 38, 276 yards, 2 touchdowns. They do have Jam Miller back in this game. He didn't have a phenomenal game by any means. They do have multiple players with 4+ touches. For receiving the football, I thought it could have looked a lot better because we saw Ryan Williams had a walk-in room service touchdown for this game that he did drop. Isaiah Horton had 5 receptions for 65 yards and a touchdown. You had Lazier Brooks, who had 40 yards. Jeremy Bernard had a touchdown. Ryan Williams had 43 yards. Again, the receiving game was spread out, but in totality, they had 280 receiving yards. So it was a group effort in the passing game. And then for Georgia, we have said it time and time again, this Georgia team, the main question I have for them is the ability to have an offense that scares you in the passing game. And again, for Alabama, their secondary played phenomenal in this game. Nobody flat out beat them. But at the same time, you have Gunnar Stockton throwing for 130 yards. Why do I believe that is? The same reason Carson Beck got scapegoated last year. Because there is no player in this offense right now that is truly elite in the SEC. When we look at Chauncey Bowens in this game, he comes out of absolutely nowhere. He has 119 yards and a touchdown. Nate Frazier barely using this game, who we thought could possibly be one of the best running backs in the SEC. And then when you look at this receiving room, like 130 yards receiving from the whole entire room. Their leading receiver, Colby Young, with 59 yards. Zachariah Branch, we thought is like that one guy who could really create separation. Doesn't do it at all in this game. Only 3 receptions for 35 yards. And this is the massive question I have with Georgia. Are they able to consistently, in a college football playoff stretch, able to win out with the weapons they have? Because I don't think Gunnar Stockton is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And for him to play these SEC matchups without a game-changing receiving threat, this is the type of stuff that could happen. You lose 24-21. You get outplayed. Your passing yards gets doubled by the other team. Major question marks for me for Georgia. I've said this time and time again. And then when they had that explosion against Tennessee and Gunnar Stockton played really well, now I'm thinking, I don't want to go back on what I said, but maybe this could possibly work. Then they play Alabama and they can't get anything going in the passing game. And again, it's because Gunnar Stockton isn't one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's just a good college football quarterback. And the weapons aren't absolutely elite. And Alabama gets a massive win. This is a win that they definitely needed more than Georgia. I hate using the term that this team needs this more, but Alabama definitely needed more. And it's used for Kalen DeBoer as well, beating Georgia twice, their biggest rival, arguably. Like, I guess you would go Auburn, but this Georgia-Alabama has so much history, and where Georgia is right now in college football compared to Auburn, like this is just absolutely huge to be able to beat them twice in 2 years, and could be the one thing saving you going into next year, depending how the season goes. But it's very interesting to see when you look at Alabama, and we're going to talk about this in the next game with other teams as well. How are they going to react to this win? Is this going to be a turning point in the season for Alabama? Is this going to be a year where it is different from last year and they propelled them into the college football playoffs, or will we see them unravel again? Again, you beat Georgia. It is absolutely massive. But now it comes down to, what do you do after this? Kalen DeBoer needs to change the tone of what's around his name. And again, I'm going to keep applying pressure to him as well if we don't see him do what Alabama needs to do. But massive win for him. Now we're going to get into the last game. This is going to be the game I obviously have the most to say. Obviously, I'm a Penn State backer. I thought Penn State was the best play of the entire day. I thought this was going to be the game, where James Franklin finally wins the big one. This game I thought was really set up for Penn State to win it because, again, obviously we like to talk about the Penn State environment, the wild environment, it being the best environment in college football. Again, in my opinion, it 100% is. I went to 2 whiteout games personally. I will be going to more. Best environment in college football, without a doubt. But the reason why I think this loss is so different from a lot of other losses for James Franklin, and I know it's the same thing every year with James Franklin. Everybody's going to say it. But I thought this loss was really bad in the sense of, I feel like Penn State and the James Franklin thing gets blown out of proportion sometimes, him not being able to win the big game. I know it's a huge sample size, but, a couple of years back, I feel like Penn State was usually the underdog in these matchups. Against, like, on Ohio State, they just flat out did not have the weapons sometimes. I thought Penn State, like 2016, 2017, one of those years, I thought that was like their best team with Trace McSorley, with Saquon, the amount of NFL pass catches they had on the offense. That's when I thought was really their chance, and they did play well that season, but then after that, I was like, this Penn State team, like, yeah, they can't win the big game, but they're also the underdogs in the matchup. They also don't have the roster of the people across from them. But I thought this loss was so different and so big because I thought Penn State and Oregon on a neutral site, home field advantage taken away, were pretty even, and I would have gave Penn State the edge. So now I would give Penn State the slight edge on a roster, and then you also have this environment backing up. Like Dan Lanning said, that should give you 7 points automatically, having this environment backing you up, and you still lose this game. So that's the big difference in this game for me when it comes to the noise around James Franklin. Like, there are certain games, whether you don't play with this environment backing up or you don't have the same roster of the person across from you, where it's sometimes blown out of proportion a little bit, but this is a game that Penn State should have won. It's a game 100% Penn State should have won, like I said. They're even, if not better than Oregon. And, I don't know how that statement is now because Oregon has looked really good. They are 5-0. But roster-wise, throughout that roster, you're even with Oregon, and you have this insane environment backing you up, and you are not able to get this win. This feels different to me. Now we're going to get into the game, and we're going to talk about after the game how I think this could shape both these teams' seasons. Now, for this game, we saw throughout 3.5 quarters basically no scores. We saw a 3-3 defensive battle for 3.5 quarters. Why do I think this happened? I think this happened because you have an Oregon team and a Penn State team that played absolutely nobody. So I think defenses are able to react, but offense takes a little time to settle in. And when you have two teams, two offenses that haven't played anybody, this is why it becomes a 3-3 battle for 3.5 quarters, because both offenses take a huge jump in competition in this game with what they are seeing and what they're going to have to read. Now, we see Oregon jump all the way to a 17-3 lead going into the fourth quarter. In the middle and like the beginning of the fourth quarter, 17-3 lead. First of all, I want to say Dante Moore, absolutely phenomenal. Like, I get it. There was no big explosive plays from this Oregon offense, but when you're playing at Penn State in a whiteout, it's really hard to dial up things like that. Not only with the crowd noise, with the environment, it's just tough to dial up things like that. But Dante Moore did everything right. When we look at Dante Moore, 29 for 39, 248 yards, 3 touchdowns. He wasn't shelled at all from the environment when, like I said, he hasn't played nobody going into the season, and he plays the toughest environment. He looked really, really good. And no mistakes is absolutely phenomenal from him as well. I mean, I guess you can say his one turnover did come from the 2-point conversion, but again, it's on a 2-point conversion. He looked really, really good. This Oregon offense, the depth they have at running back is phenomenal. They haven't really used Mekhi Hughes this season, who I thought was going to be a major impact player for them. But they have multiple running backs with 4+ touches. They are able to switch backs, and it's like whoever has the hot hand. I absolutely love that philosophy. And then the receiving, the Corey Moore, 7 receptions for 89 yards. Him to be able to do this against Penn State, one of the best teams in the country, proves to me that the Corey Moore could be one of the best receivers in the country this year as a true freshman. There was question marks for that. Obviously, it looked really good against non-competition, but for him to be able to have 89 yards in this game, super impressive to me. Kenyon Sadiq played pretty good as well, 6 receptions, 49 yards. Now, like I said, they go into the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter, with a 17-3 lead, and I really love how Penn State responded to that adversity. We see Drew Aller throw the best play in the entire game, the prettiest ball to Devontae Ross, showing what he is able to do. And then they also have a methodical drive where it is a trick play, and Devontae Ross scores again to have the ability to tie this game up. Oregon gets the ball back with 30 seconds. There wasn't really anything there. They weren't going to try anything crazy. They were just going to get into OT. Then we see both teams score in OT as well. Oregon gets the ball first and second OT, where you got to go for 2-point conversions. Dante Moore, his ability to escape the pocket and hit, I believe it was Gary Bryant for the touchdown. Again, that was all Dante Moore. His ability and his pocket presence is, I think, just elite in college football. He doesn't use his legs as much as I thought he was going to use his legs, but he uses them to look up and pass the football, and that, I believe, was the difference in the second OT. Then he throws an interception as he tries to get the 2-point conversion. And again, what happens with Penn State? The first play of second OT, where the leverage is arguably on your side because you're in 4-down territory every play. You're on the 25-yard line. The team started out not scoring 6 points, and the first play, Drew Aller just throws a horrible ball. The reason why this ball was horrible, I understand he was trying to get it over Dylan Dieneman. Dylan Dieneman is arguably the best player on this Oregon team. He tries to get it over him. Not only that, the gain he would have got if he was fitting in that tight window was minimum, and there was about 3 Oregon players surrounding. It's just not a good ball. It's just not a good ball. And then when you get into Drew Aller in the big game, this is the third game now, third big game for this Penn State team, where Drew Aller ends the game in a pick pretty much. He did it against Oregon last year. Now, that game was a little different. Oregon was pretty dominant last year and was leading throughout that whole game pretty big. They would have to get a touchdown end two. He ends it there. And then because they were down by 8. Obviously, everybody knows what happened in the Notre Dame game, a game away from the national championship. He throws interception there, pretty much end the game. It ends in a field goal for Notre Dame. And now in this game, in double OT, where you could argue Penn State had the leverage because only 6 points were put up in double OT. That was a win for that defense. And the first play out, you throw your worst pass of the game. You make your worst decision of the entire game. And now this is 3 times in the last not even 2 years in big matchups that the game ends in an interception on you. A guy that a lot of people believe could be the first quarterback taken in the NFL draft. I don't like to say one game decides an NFL draft stock, one game decides, a whole player's career, but this game was massive for stock. And Dante Moore, in a year where a lot of quarterbacks have been disappointed, he has been rising up. Now he's the top Heisman candidate off this game. And I said to you guys why I believe Dante Moore was a good Heisman bet. I didn't know what we were going to expect from Dante Moore. I thought it was going to go one or two ways. It was going to go like this, where he was going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country, or it was going to be a complete bust. It goes the way where he is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. But also what is favorable for Dante Moore, if you took Dante Moore as a Heisman bet, is this was the game that could pretty much decide the Heisman race for Dante Moore. Because out of anybody else, arguably, in the Heisman race, Dante Moore is the easiest to remain in the schedule. He plays Indiana, which is a tough game, but that's the toughest game he's going to play after that. Who else do they play? Because why am I bugging? Oh, they play USC, who I thought was also a tough game, and Washington as well. But again, this team doesn't have to play Ohio State. This team doesn't have a major out-of-conference SEC matchup. So Dante Moore could really decide the Heisman race, because if he continues to play this well, he has a favorable path to win the Heisman, the most favorable path in the country. Now, another thing I want to discuss with this Penn State-Oregon game as well is how is this going to shape both team seasons? Now, like I mentioned with Oregon, they're going to ride the schedule out. They're going to be in the Big Ten Championship. They're going to be in the college football playoffs without any hiccups, because they're going to be a pretty sizable favorite in every matchup throughout the season. For a team like Penn State, they got to go against Ohio State as well. Obviously, they can't have any hiccups, which I don't believe they will, because as much as you want to talk about James Franklin not being able to win a big matchup, the guy also never really has any hiccups in the season as well. The thing is, why I wanted to discuss this and why I believe James Franklin didn't necessarily need to have this game. One, I still believe James Franklin is a really good coach. This was a Penn State team, no matter if you want to talk about them not winning a big matchup last year. They were one of the Final Four teams in the college football playoffs. Like, the season last year was still pretty good. I know it's national championship or bust for a program like this, but again, not a season that you should really be on the hot seat as a coach. But why I said James Franklin didn't need to have this game, one, because like I said, they're going to be in the college football playoffs. But two, if he has this game and he doesn't win the big matchup in the college football playoffs, that's really going to cause some insane hot seat style questions. Even though I think James Franklin is a really good coach, and the way the college football landscape is, it's really hard to fire a guy like him. I don't think he deserves to be fired. But I would much rather, even him, all of Penn State, if this was, a lesson learned this season, this was adversity faced, and then he wins the big matchup in the college football playoffs. Because we've seen the same thing happen in reverse to Oregon last year. Oregon had that huge win for Dan Lanning, one of Dan Lanning's really first staple wins. Again, he did it against Washington the year before. He didn't do it against Washington the year before. So one of his first really staple wins against Ohio State, a game that they were underdogs in. But then we saw in the playoffs the second time around, they get blown out of the water. So maybe the same thing could happen in reverse for Penn State. And that's why I said he didn't need to have this win, because it's really going to be looked at what you do in the college football playoffs. Maybe they face Oregon again. They face a big matchup in the college football playoffs. That's when you want to change the tone in the college football playoffs. That's when you want to change the tone of him not being able to win a big game. In the regular season, would it have meant something? Yeah, 100%. Is it a game they should have won? 100%. But this Penn State team needs to make it happen in the postseason. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays. Drop down below what you think, what you thought of all these games, what you thought of all these storylines. And again, like I said, do you think one college football slate should be absolutely stacked, or should they spread out? That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and